Welcome back to the video lecture series for Ethical Leadership, Philosophy 119, offered through the Pennsylvania State University. I'm Dr. William Behun. Today I want to talk about a specific instance within Plato's Apology, specifically the story of Chaerephon and his visit to the oracle at Delphi. You've got to understand, the oracle at Delphi in the ancient world was the mouthpiece for the god Apollo. And when the oracle answered your question, if she deigned to answer it at all, she would give you an answer that required a certain kind of introspection or investigation. You had to puzzle it out. It wasn't clear or straightforward. So Chaerephon goes to the oracle and he asks the question, is there any man wiser than Socrates? And in an uncharacteristically straightforward manner, the oracle simply says, no. When Socrates hears of this, he thinks, the oracle must be trying to teach me something. She must be trying to tell me something that I have to puzzle out, because I know that I'm not the wisest man. So I'll go and try to find somebody who's wiser than I am. And so he goes off on a kind of journey, a kind of adventure, looking for somebody who is wiser than he is. And he starts by going to the people who are entrusted with what's arguably the most important job in the community, the politicians, the people who have to take care of the public welfare, the greatest leaders of the community. So he goes to them and he finds that when he criticizes what they say, when he questions their wisdom, that they become angry, that they become defensive, that they hear only that he's telling them that they're wrong. And so he looks at these people and says, well, they may be wise about certain things, but they're not wise about everything, but they think they are. And so I'm wiser than these people. So next he goes to the poets. This may seem strange, but you have to understand that within the Athenian society of the time, the poets held an extraordinary role as educators, shapers of public opinion. So he goes to the poets, and he thinks that they must be wise because of the status that they hold in the community. But instead he finds that these are people who don't possess a real wisdom or a skill, but rather are almost like conduits for the power of God. So it's not that he's dismissing their power or disdaining them in any way, but rather he says that they operate without wisdom. They operate through inspiration. And this is the way that we think of artists still today. He finds that critics, people outside of the artistic process, seem better equipped to talk about the artistic production of the poets than the poets themselves. And so he says, these are important people, these are profoundly impactful people, but they're not wise. They don't have skill or knowledge. So he goes finally to people that he knows possess some certain kind of skill. He goes to the craftsmen. Now it's one thing to say that the maker of a poem is inspired by God and works through a kind of divine madness. It's another thing to say that the person who makes a table doesn't have a real skill. And what he finds is that the people who have some particular skill, whether it's in carpentry or architecture or anything else, think that they're therefore qualified to talk about a whole range of topics about which they don't really know, don't really have knowledge. And so Socrates looks finally at all three of these groups and he says, I am wiser than they are, not because I possess some particular knowledge, some particular skill, but because I realize that I am not wise. I realize that there's so much more that I can learn. It's the recognition of his own ignorance that makes Socrates the wisest man. Now I think that this has something to do with leadership very specifically. Because when we look to our leaders, we want somebody who is wise. We want somebody who is committed to what they believe in. We want somebody who is sure of themselves. But at the same time, we want somebody who is capable of admitting when they don't have all the answers, and capable of turning to people who might have superior knowledge in particular circumstances. What Plato is suggesting here in terms of leadership is that the best leaders are those who are wise in this particularly Socratic way, that they have a sense of the big picture, of of strategy, but that they're also wise enough to recognize when they don't have the answers, particularly when it comes to tactics, and can therefore turn to people who have better skills, who have more knowledge than they do. I think that this is an important lesson to take away from Plato's Apology, and I think that it's a key moment within the text.